We've worked with many principals who have a very strong commitment to improving instruction in their schools, and those are the schools where we've had the most success in implementing the framework for effective instruction. These are principals that spend time in classrooms, who learn the model themselves, who find a way to think collaboratively with teachers about how to solve sticky classroom problems, like the students are not engaged or the students are resisting becoming active learners in this classroom. How can we support them better? What piece is missing? They're leaders who read about the learning strategies, who provide teachers with new tips and ideas about what to try in their classrooms, who can go in a classroom and definitely identify this isn't working, who can give feedback to teachers, but not just feedback that says this isn't working, but who then sit down in a collaborative way and say, so how can we figure this out together? There also tend to be leaders who think in a school-wide way rather than in a piecemeal department by department manner. So they don't necessarily say, I'm getting a math coach and I'm getting a literacy coach. They say, we are going to implement a school-wide model. We're going to frame all of our work with students around this model, and we're going to see how it goes, and we're going to make it our own.
I've been using FEI for 2 years now, 3 years now, since the school started, right? I think it builds well around professional development. It helps teachers understand a framework for what they're trying to do in the classroom. It gives them an idea about what lessons should really look like and how to craft a lesson and how to think about where they want to get to, what they want their students to know and be able to do. And it gives them a pathway for planning their lessons and their units so they can get there.
The ideal leader would be creating this kind of culture that says, here's our PD, and we're going to do teaching and learning, and we have a set of days where we do that, and so we move from theory to practice to reflection. And we are going to take this seriously enough that the follow-up will be, I will observe in the classroom and we will have individual meetings so I can give you feedback. But I need to get up to date on the strategies enough to give you feedback, because it can't be like a red marker where you go into the classroom and go, well, Miss Holstein, I haven't seen you do the strategies, or it seemed very minimalist. Because of course you can notice that, but if you don't have a way to have that teacher improve or a book to tell them, and so that's where the coach comes in. A good principal will take advantage of the coaching and say, you know, Lou, I really saw a weak lesson on questioning the text, but I don't really know what to tell the person to do. I just know it was weak. That's great, and that's how they're learning. So it's an iterative process.
The coach needs to be part of the staff, not a tertiary or auxiliary person that just supports staff once a week. I believe that the staff sees Shannon as another staff member. I see Shannon as a staff member, and what that's allowed us to do is have a very collegial working relationship with her, where teachers do not see her as an outsider that she doesn't know what she's talking about, or she's here for 1 day a week or anything like that, where they really see she knows what's going on in the school, she understands it, and also she and I are repeating each other's messages to the teachers.
Shannon works with every teacher in the school, and the way that she does that is she meets individually with all the teachers, but also once a week we all meet as a group with her, and we discuss our inquiry research, our action research projects, and what's been going on in our classrooms and our best practices, and it creates an environment in which we can communicate with one another and share our best practices and share our struggles so that we can improve the school as a whole, and things that are working really well we can roll out on a wider scale.
It's one thing for me to go into classes. It's another to have someone coming in weekly or bi-weekly and going into classes and doing more in-depth debriefing with the teachers. I think that's the biggest difference, because you have I think more the luxury of time with a coach coming in and being able to say, all right, this day I'm gonna sit in on these 3 classes and debrief with those 3 teachers, and then find where the commonalities are, be they strengths or weaknesses, and then help support me in overall threads of professional development.
The coaches have to help train the principal, and the principal actually has to take it up as part of his or her learning. So it's over a period of time, and that's what we've noticed, that principals over a period of time become more and more conversant with how to implement these strategies.
We have an agreed upon set of practices that we're going to use. Everybody understands the vocabulary of those practices. We agree on the structure and the format of how those practices look in the classroom. So when I talk to them about what I've seen, so in a post-observation, we're speaking with a common vocabulary. And when I say to them, you did building background really well. However, I feel like the lesson fell apart when we got to review an assessment. What do you think about how that happened? How did that play out for you? Was that in your plan? So I think it really gives us a strong vocabulary and a framework for how we talk about teaching and learning.
So I think a big breakthrough, not just for me as a teacher in my classroom, but for the Jill Chaffetz School as a whole, really is that now with this coaching and the common language we have around the FEI, my colleagues and I are able to kind of really talk about the anatomy of a lesson, and we know what we're talking about when we say build background or reflection assessment or the difference between practice and application. And those kind of discussions have really led to kind of getting us from, each person planning random classes and random lessons to really having kind of a community of teachers that really has a shared framework for how to go about planning and implementing our lesson plans.
We've been working with FEI since the summer of 2007, just before the school opened. We opened with an extensive professional development set of workshops to introduce teachers to the principles and practices of FEI. We needed to work with teachers to help them understand that, reading is fundamental, and every teacher, in a sense, is a reading teacher in our school, because unless students are able to comprehend the content, then how much learning is going to take place. The literacy or learning strategies, we call them, were things which teachers learned very early about how to use those strategies or to help kids learn those strategies in order to access content. Also, the move to Bloom's taxonomy says blooming, where kids develop higher order thinking skills. I felt that those seem very congruent to what, at least our vision of what our school, and by extension transfer schools, ought to be paying attention to from the very beginning.
We're asking people to come way out of their comfort zone, think about Bloom's, think about learning strategies, thinking about everybody becoming a reading teacher. I think it makes them anxious.
Anne has so many strengths, and as a principal, I think she really pushes us to use the FEI, not because she hasn't thought of anything else, but she really believes in it. And I think she has a real sense of how students learn and how teachers ought to teach, and that kind of cohesive framework she has for what classes should look like, how students should learn, and how teachers should prepare for their lessons has really helped us push instruction forward here using that model.
I think it's the idea that I'm going to lead instruction, which means I got to get better as well at this instruction. And it means setting up a professional development that's both sequenced and strategic, and then the follow-up, which I think is where many of the principals fall short. And I understand, having been a principal, but I actually know that if you're not in the classroom and you're not giving feedback to your teachers and you're not developing their thinking, You cannot blame the teachers for not moving forward. If it wasn't taught explicitly and there weren't expectations around what a product's going to look like, and there wasn't review of that and then reflection so you can grow as a student, you can't blame the teachers.
The challenge really is, how do you somehow craft the professional development opportunities and then hold teachers accountable for making this happen in their classroom? And of course that happens through my observation of classes. It happens through my expectation that when teachers write unit plans, which I collect very regularly, that there are explicit indication in the plan as to how, what strategies will you be using during this unit, and what tools and how are you going to help kids get that?
Implementation is always more difficult than the theoretical. The principle becomes the key piece, because as a coach, we're only there once a week. It's the principle has to build in the context for this. This book, Strategies That Work, first of all, it's a tremendous book to do across curriculum, but you'll give it to the teachers and you'll say, okay, take this book because it's really helpful, but you haven't really investigated the book with the teachers, and then the teacher gets overwhelmed by their everyday life, and the book goes over here. But if the principal is making this book the PD for the year or for a half a year, and they're saying, we're going to read this lesson together, and we're all going to try this mini lesson, and then we're going to come back, that is when they start to say, oh, God, this book, why didn't I use this book all along?
One of the strengths of this model is that it doesn't focus on a single teacher. It focuses on the whole school and all of its students and teachers and faculty using the FEI in a meaningful way. And that goes to our principal as well. I think the fact that she attends the trainings and she understands the FEI and really believes in it allows her to really kind of get us together and have us all believe in this framework going forward. And that definitely informs the way we go about professional development here at Jill Chaffetz.
This thing, it really works, so you have to stick with it and see it through. And then teachers, you know, it gets easier as you do it more.
Just from observing classes and listening to kids, I think we have come a long way since year one. Because transfer schools take kids from a variety of schools, you know, types of schools. One of the things that we anticipated quite early, since we're dealing with overage, undercredited students, it means they have maybe been out of school for a while, may have fallen behind. We knew we were going to get struggling readers, and now we know struggling writers. And so the idea of using literacy across the curriculum as kind of the underpinning of what we do, as addressing the kind of skills that we think that kids would need to be able to accelerate their learning, FEI was the perfect fit.
I work harder if I understand the work. Like, if I ain't understand, like in my old school, I didn't understand the work, so I lacked off, didn't do a lot of homeworks because I understand what I was doing. But now I'm really focused and I'm doing what I gotta do. But I never been doing this good before in the other school.